Stop doing what I did not say. Jesus asked those who claimed to be his followers, "Why do you call me, Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?" Luke 6 verse 46. This question explores the principle that true Christian faith is demonstrated through obedience to God's commandments and Jesus' teachings, rather than merely through outward actions that humans verbally proclaim. It emphasizes that Christians' actions must align with the truth and that true discipleship involves following Jesus' example and commands. Anything less is a sin and misleading. So why has a practice like tithing, which Jesus did not command, unfortunately, become the financial hallmark of some churches? Moreover, 1. The Lord didn't ask you to tithe as a Christian. 2. You must pay the appropriate parties, the Levites, not the pastors. 3. Even if you need to pay, use suitable farm products rather than cash. The Bible emphasizes that obedience is a key indicator of genuine faith, and those who claim to know God but do not obey his commandments or adhere to personal convictions, such as tithing, are not truly following him. By addressing Jesus as Lord, you recognize his divine authority and role as the Messiah. This part of the verse emphasizes the necessity of obedience to Jesus' teachings. Tithe. God told Old Testament Jews, not Christians. However, in the verse, Jesus challenges the sincerity of their acknowledgement, pointing out the inconsistency between their words and actions. Therefore, do not allow those who profit from the church tithes to lead you into sin against Christ through the gross disobedience of doing what he did not ask. We must reconsider church tithing, as this post highlights the biblical perspective and practical reasons. You shall also truly tithe all the increase of your grain. Indeed, the field yields a yearly harvest, Deuteronomy 14 verse 22. Therefore, follow the Lord's command if you are eager to pay or collect tithes. 1. Tithe to the church staff rather than the pastors. I give the Levites all the tithes in Israel as their inheritance in return for their work while serving at the church tent of meeting, Numbers 18:21. 2. The church workers must give the Lord a tenth of their tithes. The Lord told Moses, "Speak to the Levites and say to them, when you receive from the Israelites the tithe I give you as your inheritance, you must present a tenth of that tithe as the Lord's offering." Numbers 18:25-26. 3. Church workers must also tithe from grains and wine. They are required to pay 1/10 to the pastors, Aaron and his sons, instead of the pastors collecting money and then giving it to the church staff as if they were doing them a favor. Also, you, Moses, were to consider the offering as grain from the threshing floor or juice from the winepress. Jesus could have commanded it if he wanted us to give tithes. In the cultural context of today's church tithing, a disciple is expected to closely follow the teachings and example of their rabbi, both verbally and in action. However, the latter does not truly correspond. Jesus highlights the disconnect between verbal profession and actual practice. The call to obedience is a recurring theme in Scripture, as evidenced in passages such as Matthew 7 verses 21-23, where Jesus warns that not everyone who calls him Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of the Father. It is not God's will that Christians should tithe. Instead, it was his will that Jews should tithe for the benefit of the Levites, who were not given land to farm. In this way, you will also present an offering to the Lord. In addition, from all the tithes you receive from the Israelites, you must give the Lord's portion to Aaron, the priest, Numbers 18:27-28. Lastly, the tithe must be farm products and wine. The best parts go to the Lord. The church workers can eat the rest with their families. When you present the best part, we will record it for you as the product of the threshing floor or the winepress, Numbers 18:30. Undoubtedly, was that not clear? Tithes should categorically come only from the winepress and agriculture. Therefore, the notion that you ought to tithe every cent you get is a fallacy. True faith is shown through actions that align with Jesus' teachings. Consequently, the key point now is to convince yourself why you should not tithe, because Jesus didn't ask me to do it, and to ignore the false doctrine about tithing that is motivated by the selfish interests of pastors. This underscores the idea that true faith is demonstrated through actions that align with Jesus' teachings. Doing what he did not ask you to do is tantamount to a wasted effort. Instead of paying tithes, consider finding a better use for the money. Finally, it's time to stop believing in the tales of those who tithed and became affluent. Anyone hoping to become wealthy through tithing is simply a dreamer. Therefore, what matters now is why you should not tithe your hard-earned cash. From others, Peter answered. Then the children are exempt, Jesus said to him. But so that we may not offend, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch. Open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. Give it to them for my tax and yours. Matthew 17 verses 26 to 27. Can you see that money has existed on earth since the drawing of time? Contrariwise, Satan did not create money, as some charlatans assert. Besides, he can only kill, steal, and destroy. Peter obtained the 4 drachmas coin from inside a fish to pay tax, not from the devil. Don't fall for tithing, discover the blessings that follow. Again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land. He said to Ephron in their hearing, "Listen to me, if you will. I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered, "Listen to me. My lord, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Bury your dead." Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms, and he weighed out the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the current merchant weight, Genesis 23 verses 12 to 16. When Jacob learned that grain existed in Egypt, he asked his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other?" He continued, "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." Genesis 42 verses 1 to 2. Regardless, we need to gain an understanding from the patriarchs who were friends of God. That's why you should not tithe. It shall lead you to discover the truth and the blessings that follow if you diligently adhere to Jesus' commands and teachings. Additionally, understanding why Christians are not obligated to tithe contributes to gaining wisdom. You do well to observe them strictly.